Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. You know who else I've been critical of over the last couple weeks? How about John Calipari? Not sure how much you've been listening to this show. I've been very critical of John Calipari, and I called Kentucky basketball basically the Michigan football of college basketball in the sense that I don't want to keep talking about them because I don't want to keep talking about a team that is uninteresting and doesn't win, but every week they give me something new to talk about. And for the first time in about 6 weeks, I got something really good and fun to talk about, and that's a win over Mississippi State on Saturday. And so I'm not here to talk. First of all, we got a ton of Kentucky fans that listen to this show, and you guys know I'm not just here to talk about a win, but man, does a win feel good. Instead, though, what I am here to talk about is how the win happened, what happened, and why it was one of, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, one of the most surreal, incredible things that I have ever seen in my time covering college sports. So for the layman, this is what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you the details and then give you the story behind the story, and then we'll get into the game themselves. For the layman, the reason the game was so cool was because Kentucky, not sure if you heard, kind of stink. 1-6 coming into this game. They hadn't won since their opener against Morehead State, had lost 6 in a row, had looked miserable at times. Nobody's playing well. They can't hit threes. They're turning the ball over too much. Well, Calipari sort of shakes up his lineup. Then he gets ejected. But this kid comes off the bench named Dontaie Allen, and he goes berserk. Kentucky had not hit more than, I think, 6 3-pointers. They hit more than 6 3-pointers in any game this year one time, okay? 6 3-pointers as a team. Dante Allen comes off the bench and goes 7 for 11 from 3, 23 points overall, and is bananas. And, I mean, he is like, a 6'7" Steph Curry, like step back, fade away, off a pick, 2 hands in his face. This kid cannot miss. So that story is cool enough in and of itself. But what makes it cooler is the story behind the story. And I have so many of you guys who listen to this show religiously, guys and girls, and I appreciate so much that you guys support this show, listen every episode. But the reason I bring that up is because I talk about often, sometimes it's not just the story, but it's the story behind the story, which is so cool. And I don't think there's a better example of this than Dontaie Allen at Kentucky. And here is the story behind the story for the Kentucky people that are not diehard Kentucky fans. They don't know the backstory. Dontaie Allen is, by all accounts, at least in the past decade or so, one of the best high school players in Kentucky basketball history, at least in modern history. Was Kentucky Basketball Player of the Year, averaged 40 points per game in his senior season, and he committed relatively early. It was the end of his summer of his junior year, so it's not like he committed as a sophomore, but it's not like John Calipari took him at the last minute. But after he redshirted last year, there was a car accident, and then there was a knee injury. Everyone was kind of wondering, is this kid ever going to get his shot, or is this kid going to get a shot at all? And it's one thing to not give the local kid a shot when you're winning, right? It's one thing, 2014, 2015, Kentucky's going to Final Fours, and they have Derek Willis and Dominique Hawkins, 2 local kids sitting on the bench. It's another thing when you're 1-6 and you can't get out of your own way, and you can't do the one thing that Dontaie Allen does well, which is fill the basket. Kentucky came into Saturday afternoon last in the SEC in scoring, and they got this kid sitting on the bench that averaged 40 a game in high school, and Calipari just refuses to play him. And not only does he refuse to play him, but I've talked about it a little bit on this show over the last couple weeks, he refuses to play him with the most absurd excuses imaginable. After one game, Calipari says, well, I got to let my other guys miss before I can start bringing guys off the bench. And in a way, I got what Calipari was saying. What he was saying was, I can't pull a guy every time he misses a shot or that guy's confidence is going to be shot. But the way he said it was bad enough. And then on top of that, one, you're crushing the kid. You're basically saying, I don't have any confidence in that kid, but I have too much confidence in these kids. And second of all, you're kind of giving off this vibe that there's entitlement within the program, that if you're a 5-star player, it doesn't matter how many shots you miss, we're going to keep running you out there. So there's that. Then after that, in the most recent game against Louisville last week, Calipari comes to the podium and basically says, well, I didn't put him in the first half, so how am I going to put him in the second half? And so Kentucky fans are livid, and I get why they're livid, and this is the story behind the story. But after about the last 3 or 4 losses, every press conference, Calipari is asked, hey, you going to give Dante Allen a chance? You going to give Dante Allen a chance? What's going on with Dante Allen? And at first it was kind of like, hey, maybe he could help. Hey, maybe this would shake things up. And then over the last 2, 3, 4 games, when it became clear that what Calipari was doing was not working, and the one thing that Dante Allen can do well, Kentucky desperately needed, it got more and more and more aggressive. And essentially what happened over the last 2 weeks, the Kentucky fan base through the media basically peer pressured John Calipari into giving this kid Dante Allen a chance. And so there goes Dante Allen. He's waiting his turn, and Calipari, again, keeps coming up with all these excuses. Oh, we're going to wait, and, he's going to get his turn. I told him to be ready. And then there was a weird closed-door scrimmage with a D2 team from right across town, and nobody really knows what happens with that. And so finally, this kid gets his shot and literally puts the entire team on his back and leads Kentucky to a victory at Mississippi State. It was incredible to watch because Kentucky was doing their usual Kentucky thing this year. They can't make shots. They're turning the ball over. They fall way down in the second half. Allen makes a shot or two. Then Calipari gets ejected. Then he gets hot. Then the staff pulls him to get him rest. It ends up going to overtime and double overtime. But he hit every big shot except for 1 or 2. I don't want to discredit anybody else. And Kentucky gets the win. And so it was an incredible story, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see what happens going forward. Because Calipari even said in the postgame media availability, not media availability, in the locker room, he said it's on video. You can find it on the Kentucky Instagram page, the Kentucky Twitter page, but he flat out says, hey, he got his shot and he delivered, and some of you guys are going to lose some playing time over it. And so it'll be fascinating to see what happens. We know that they had a kid named Cam Fletcher leave the program. He is since back. Calipari has basically said the kid has no guarantees that he's going to play. But freshman B.J. Boston, McDonald's All-American, is really struggling. Terrence Clark, McDonald's All-American, was injured on Saturday, did not play, and is struggling. And it's going to be fascinating to see what Calipari does because, again, the team got hot when Calipari got ejected and when his assistant coach, Bruiser Flint, kept this kid in the game. The one thing I would say, first of all, if Calipari does not play this kid, he will never live it down. I saw people say, my buddy Jack Pilgrim included, this is not a criticism of Jack. I heard a lot of people say Calipari will never live down not playing Dante Allen until yesterday. Well, I disagree. If he keeps winning, nobody's going to care. If you go on a 15-3 run in SEC play, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it does, nobody's really going to care that you didn't play Dante Allen right away as long as he's getting playing time. Now, if you immediately go back to not playing him or limiting how much he can play, then you will never hear the end of it. But what is interesting, though, is it does give Kentucky their entire season a second chance. Because if you watch the game, when Dante Allen started hitting shots, it did 3 very important things. First of all, it just gave them offense, which they've needed since the first game of the season. Second of all, it created all sorts of spacing on the floor where you just get one guy to hit threes. I mean, we all watch basketball here, people, whether it's Kansas, Baylor, Gonzaga, whatever. When you hit threes, that opens up the floor that much more where now all of a sudden there isn't so much of a burden on your big guys down low. There isn't so much of a burden on your point guard to make plays in traffic. All of a sudden the floor is really, really, really wide. And 3, and I thought this was a really important part, it gave everybody else confidence. And John Calipari kind of talked about that in the post-game press conference where he said, like, dude, I'm just telling you, man, it built on itself when we were struggling in that one guy misses a shot and then everybody else thinks it's their job to pick up the team. And so then those guys miss shots and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy thing. Well, all of a sudden, Dante Allen made a few shots and there were guys on that floor for Kentucky that looked that much better. Devin Askew, their point guard, finished with 11 points. Olivier Sarr hit 2 3-pointers and looked like the grad transfer, or I guess regular transfer, not grad transfer, that I was expecting him to. So it's a fascinating story, and I just think it's worth monitoring because it is going to be just a really, really, really interesting thing to see what Kentucky does going forward. And I'll tell you this, the SEC is really, really, really tough this year. Don't listen to all these idiots that say it's not tough. Florida's good. Tennessee's awesome. We're going to get to Arkansas momentarily. Missouri's a tourney team. And I think LSU's pretty good as well. That's 5 teams I just named off the top of my head. Bama, too, is playing really well, which we're going to get to. But I'm just saying, you get on a little bit of run. You build some confidence. This kid may have single-handedly saved their season. We will see. We probably won't get a real definitive answer here for the next couple days because they do play Vandy, who, if you can't beat Vandy later this week, that's bad, bad, bad news. But you do have Florida, Alabama, and Auburn in 3 straight games after that, which could and will be a challenge.